Do all vegans think the same? This is one in a series from Jubilee. I think it's a really interesting concept. It's the same channel or company. I don't know anything about Jubilee, to be honest, but the same one that came up with that secret meat eater. Basically, there are, I believe, 6 statements that are given to a group of vegans, like 6 vegans. There's Nikki, Sean, Elizabeth, Tyra, Richard. I think that's it, actually. I think there are 5. So they give these statements, and then for each statement, you choose whether you strongly disagree, somewhat agree, and strongly agree. And they actually physically make their choices. So they're in this like garage or some, large room with actual white lines, and you walk over to the, section to the line that you agree with, which I think is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool way to do it. And of course, that means everyone can see everyone else's responses, and it gives everyone a chance to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to give my answers to the questions, or my feelings on the statements, I guess, as a vegan, and also talk about their responses. If you're at all familiar with my channel, I'm sure you can see where this is going. I have a hard time giving just straight up like strongly disagree answers. All of these have like qualifiers, so I'm one of those people. Enjoy. You can be vegan for reasons other than ethical. So I somewhat agree. Richard is right that the definition is clear that it's not just about food, but I personally do use the terms like ethical vegan and dietary vegan. I do think those are useful. Although now that it seems we've settled on plant-based as vegan, right, in terms of a vegan diet and not just like mostly plants, that might be a more useful distinction. Frankly, I don't really think this matters. I think it only matters when discussing veganism, when it is important that we define our terms, right? But in everyday life, I don't really care if someone calls themselves vegan, but they buy like Maybelline makeup, right? Like they're otherwise vegan, but they buy Maybelline or some other makeup that isn't cruelty-free. In fact, I think this could be potentially useful. Labels are a huge deal, and they absolutely influence behavior, and this is like not controversial. Vegetarians can consume milk without really thinking much about it, without really paying much attention to it, because it's not causing any cognitive dissonance. They aren't labeling themselves as vegan, they're labeling themselves as vegetarian, and milk is totally okay on a vegetarian diet. Drinking milk is not in conflict with their personal identity. There's good reason to believe that somebody who identifies as vegan, even if they aren't fully vegan, that they are going to consume fewer animal products than if they were to go back, so to speak, and use a vegetarian label. Because again, now they don't have that cognitive dissonance that's telling them that, you really shouldn't be drinking milk, you really shouldn't be eating eggs. Instead, it's like, oh, I'm vegetarian, I can eat as much of those things as I want. I'm not saying this to hate on vegetarians or anything like that. I think vegetarian is a good transition for a lot of people, and obviously you're still making a big difference. My point, again, is just that there is good reason to believe that identifying as a vegan is different than identifying as a vegetarian, and it can influence our behavior. There are also people like myself, like Nikki and Tyra in the video as well, who went vegan, primarily or predominantly for health reasons. I've criticized this in the past because it seems like, based on the evidence, that these are the people who are most at risk for going back to animal products. And certainly they're the most likely to be taken in by like grandiose claims about veganism and to go for these sort of, really fringe, really restrictive vegan diets. But I think the difference is that none of us are vegan today for primarily health reasons, but because we think it's the right thing to do. So we have become ethical vegans. And speaking for myself, I no longer follow the crazy like fruit-based diet that I followed when I originally went vegan. So I'm sure that plays at least some role in me staying vegan. I will not buy or cook non-vegan items for loved ones. Agree. And I can understand someone like Elizabeth, choosing to buy something like a burrito for her brother. And I would never shame anyone for making that choice. Obviously it can be really difficult to be vegan in a non-vegan world, and we all have to make choices like that, with the people we love. But I will say that if you have a family member or a friend who is asking you to do something like that, they're asking you to buy a non-vegan product, it is probably time to have a conversation with that person, right? Unless you've already, discussed it. But To me, that's pretty rude, pretty disrespectful. Not saying that's what's going on with Elizabeth and her brother, but just in general, if you have someone in your life doing that, they may just not understand what veganism means to you. No, a lot of people do think that it is just a diet. It's why I do like the distinction between dietary vegan, ethical vegan, or plant-based and vegan. I know it's a little bit fraught because vegans often use it as a slight against people who are just doing the diet. I don't mean it that way at all. I just think it's, it can be useful to have different terms, right? But yeah, obviously someone who is asking you to do that, it could just be that they don't really understand what it means to you. So it can be useful to just tell them, most people are nice people, right? And they don't want to hurt you, right? They don't want you to feel bad about doing something and to have this conflict in your life that you want to please this person who's in your life and that you love, but it's also causing you pain. Most people will go, oh my God, no, don't worry about it. You don't have to buy me the burrito, right? I say agree rather than strongly agree because, I don't buy any non-vegan items for loved ones. I don't cook any either, but I will allow certain things in my house. There are people in my family who are vegetarian, but not vegan. And so, they'll eat cheese or like creamer or something like that when they visit. And so I have no problem with that kind of stuff in the house. That's fine. Now, if they want me to like cook a casserole or something with cheese, like I don't think I'm going to be able to do something like that, right? But having it in the house for them to use, that's totally fine. But like meat, no. But I can imagine a scenario. I warned you, this is going to be a lot of, qualifiers. Anyway, I can't imagine a scenario where I would allow meat in the house or would even like potentially cook it. So let's say that I have a nephew and this nephew is severely picky, like not just, oh, they're a picky eater, but severely picky to the point where they only eat like chicken nuggets and French fries. And I love this nephew, we're very close, and they want to come visit me. Let's say they live really far away and they want to come visit me and stay with me. Am I going to say no to them? Because it's going to mean that there's going to be chicken nuggets in the house and they're going to have to be cooked in the house. Am I really going to say no? Probably not. In other words, if there is an exception to the rule, I will find it. Okay, anyway.
I've taken the liberation pledge. So I'll refuse to eat at a table where people are eating animal products. In my mind, it's the same thing as if you're eating a dog or a child in front of me. You're not gonna wanna stay at that table and be with that. You're gonna wanna try to change those people.
So I'd never heard of the liberation pledge. I had to look it up. Basically, number 1, publicly refuse to eat animals. Number 2, publicly refuse to sit where animals are being eaten. And 3, encourage others to take the pledge. So it's not animal products, as Richard says, at least the pledge specifically. It's just animals, it's meat. On a personal level, I agree. We don't go to restaurants where meat is served. We pretty much only go to vegan restaurants, but I have no problem going to a vegetarian restaurant, right? It's like having cheese and stuff in my house. That's okay, but I don't want to be around meat. It's gross. It smells gross. I've been vegan for a really long time and that's just not, to be honest, most meat, even when I wasn't vegan, did not smell particularly good. So I really don't want to go somewhere and eat and have to smell something like that. Although my partner did remind me that I will eat in Taco Bell occasionally. I don't know. I don't get a super meat smell when I go into a Taco Bell. It just smells like a Taco Bell. You know what I mean? So yeah, I never even thought about it. But yeah, every once in a while I'll sit and have my little bean and guacamole burrito in there, no problem. Point is, not eating at restaurants or at a table, with people eating steak or whatever, it's not about ethics or activism. It's just a personal choice. In fact, I think that going to the butcher shop and being around meat eaters and letting them see what it's like to be vegan. Maybe not a butcher shop because that's just going to be really sad because what the hell are you going to eat? That's just going to be depressing and they're going to be like, wow, yeah, nope, not doing that. But you know what I mean? I think being around people and just being like, yep, I'm doing this, I'm vegan, yeah, whatever. Just being an example I think that's potentially a lot better than kind of shutting yourself off from people from an activism standpoint. Again, that's not a choice that I'm making because, at the end of the day, I do have to choose my ability to be able to eat food. It's all well and good until I'm like vomiting at the table,
If you care about me as a person, how could you not change one meal?
Absolutely. Again, it's just like a family member asking you to buy something, non-vegan for them. A family member or a friend asking you to go eat with them and watch them eat animal products when you've made it clear that that's not something you're comfortable with. It's pretty disrespectful. Again, my issue specifically is with the pledge, with this idea that choosing not to eat with people who are eating animals is not just a personal choice, that it is activism. I'm not at all convinced that it is. Their only evidence is in this origin section where they talk about foot binding. According to them, what ultimately ended foot binding was a public pledge for families to agree to 1, never bind their daughters' feet, and 2, refuse to allow their sons to marry women with bound feet. These pledges completely ended the practice of foot binding. First, just assuming that this is true, this is not any evidence that refusing to eat at a table with other people eating meat, will end animal exploitation. Like, foot binding and vegetarianism are two very, very, very different things. You're talking about something that was done to one part of the population. It was done and that was it. And then with vegetarianism, you're talking about something that's done multiple times a day by everybody. They're really not comparable. And second, I don't think we should assume that this is true. I don't know that it actually is. I couldn't find any source claiming that it was the pledges and the pledges alone that did it. There were a whole host of influences on the culture that contributed to the downfall of foot binding. And third, the pledges clearly caused a lot of innocent women a lot of pain and suffering. Because of these pledges, women with bound feet, which is something that they didn't choose, right? Again, very different from vegetarianism or choosing, to eat animal products. They did not choose this for themselves. Well, now they can't find a husband. Women who have bound feet who are married were abandoned by their husbands. I don't really understand why a liberation movement would want to be tied to something like this, something with such a fraught history. And, it's great that it's over, but man, it's really sad and maybe could have been done in a better way. Anyway, next statement. You are still a vegan if you allow yourself an exception occasionally. Disagree, I guess. Again, I do see the value in someone cheating now and again, but still, calling themselves vegan or, seeing themselves identifying as vegan rather than vegetarian. Some of these questions are really tough because it's so much harder to talk about people than it is to talk about specific actions. Like, is buying a Snickers vegan? No. But is the person who bought a Snickers vegan, even though it's the first non-vegan thing they've bought in over a year? As useful as labels are, they kind of suck, right? I mean, they box us in and they create something for other people to exploit, to criticize us for. If you don't cheat, you're a hero. If you do cheat, you're a hypocrite. Even if the person that does cheat only does it once every 5 years, right? Even if they're 99.999% vegan, doesn't matter. The distinction between the vegan who hasn't had any non-vegan product in a year and the vegan who's had one Snicker bar, in a year is virtually non-existent in terms of consequences. But in terms of identity, it's everything for a lot of people. One person is part of the club and the other person isn't. It sucks, man. And when is the Snickers vegan, actually vegan again, right? When does she get to rejoin the club? Is it just as soon as she finishes the Snickers bar? It's fucking stupid. But we do need labels. right? I mean, the reality is most people eat animals and view them as lesser than, view them as property. So we do need a term to distinguish like not doing that and not viewing animals that way. And that term needs to pretty consistently mean something. So that's ultimately why I chose disagree. Is that what I chose? Yeah, disagree. But again, I personally have no issue whatsoever with the Snickers vegan referring to herself as a vegan. So that's my complicated answer. Unfortunately, the video is even worse. Things just totally go off the rails and pretty off topic.
It's the same thing with like Meatless Mondays. Like, we don't have like homophobic free Tuesdays. Like, it's every day is homophobia free, right? So like, it's the same thing for me. If like you slip up, it's like saying like, oh yeah, I'm like totally fine with certain amounts of exploitation if I'm doing it.
I don't think anyone is saying that they're vegan because they don't eat meat one day a week. Like, I don't think that's a thing, and that's certainly not the way Meatless Monday is presented. It's just Meatless Monday, right? It's just, you know, look, most people won't go vegan or they can't go vegan, but pretty much everyone can like not eat meat for one day a week. It's just a really simple, easy to understand message and a really easy way to introduce people to plant-based eating.
We live in a place where veganism is almost mainstream and it's super accessible, but there's developing countries where that's just not the case.
So we've changed topics from whether someone who occasionally eats non-vegan products can call themselves vegan to whether everyone can go vegan. And this is where Richard should have just not have said anything.
Even though like Beyond Burgers, Gardein, like those aren't accessible worldwide, we have fruits and vegetables everywhere. And like, I don't want to just tell everyone to only like
there's food
basic
deserts
plants,
though, and in food deserts that's not necessarily always true. Because I've been in these situations where it's just not really a sustainable option to feed yourself 100% vegan.
Is it more of like a convenience thing, or is it more of a like, it's really, there's literally nothing available? There's not a banana or an apple or a bean.
I spent 3 months near the Arctic Circle in Iceland, and in Iceland their diet is just, it's such a cold climate. It's all like sheep, fish, you know, it's really dairy, because
but they don't
that's
have
what
any
the
fruits or
land,
vegetables out there whatsoever at all?
the climate doesn't allow for that unless you're building greenhouses, which, you know, is like how they're moving. But in remote villages where there's only 20 people, you know, you can forage flowers to make tea and like little berries here and there, but that doesn't sustain people for the kind of climate that they experience.
Elizabeth is absolutely right. There are places in this world where it is impossible to be vegan without starving to death. And obviously in this country, there are food deserts. They exist. It's ridiculous to expect everyone to have the same access to vegan food, or to expect everyone to live on fruits and vegetables. Like, bitch, I'm vegan. I don't live on fruits and vegetables. And sneering at convenience the way he does, you know, that's kind of the worst part to me. And I hope he's learned something from this and kind of has changed his view on things. But I think it shows a lack of knowledge or a lack of experience with those who are less fortunate. Convenience may not matter when you're young and you're able-bodied and you don't have anyone you're responsible for other than yourself. But convenience for some people is everything. When you're working 2 jobs, when you have a chronic illness, when you have children to feed, it's huge. You know, 30 minutes can be the difference between takeout and a home-cooked meal. I've been bullied for being vegan. Actually, this is one I can answer very quickly. Strongly agree. I'm very, very fortunate. I cannot think of a single time. I've been vegan for a long time, so I could be misremembering, but I don't think I have. And look, I mean, I went vegan when I was already an adult, so I'm sure that plays a role. I'm sure I would have stories to tell if I were vegan when I was like 12 or something. Nikki and Tyra, they talk about being bullied, and it's really, it sucks, man. It's really heartbreaking, especially Tyra.
I get people who try to take like my blackness away. They'll say, you're not black if you're vegan. How can you be black and vegan? And it really does mess with your head. I'll get a lot of social media bullying to the point where sometimes it does affect my mental health just because I try to be a good person, but just someone finds out you're vegan and it's like the world hates you.
If you wear leather, you are not vegan. Strongly disagree, but I do have more to say on the topic, sorry. There are many people who had leather items prior to going vegan. There's no ethical issue with continuing to wear those, let's say, some leather shoes or something. In fact, I would much rather someone continue to wear old leather shoes that are still in good condition than to get rid of them and buy like new non-leather shoes. That makes no sense. It's just wasteful unless you personally, like you really don't want to wear those shoes anymore, right? So you give them to someone else. That's totally fine. But if you're just throwing away non-vegan stuff, that sucks, man. And like Elizabeth mentions, it's sometimes hard to know what is or isn't in a product. I think especially when you're talking about non-food items. I mean, she talked about bike seats having leather. That isn't even something I ever thought about, to be honest. I mean, if I wanted to get a bike again, that's not even something that I would have thought about. And I've been vegan for over a decade at this point. So yeah, I mean, all vegans make mistakes. I don't think that was really the point of this statement. I think that it's about intentionally wearing leather, right? I'm sure that everyone would agree that accidentally purchasing non-vegan shoes or something like that doesn't make you like no longer vegan.
It's hard to always know exactly what you're purchasing.
To me, it's like just not fair to the animals for us to like abuse our own ignorance and not actually take the time to research.
Or maybe not. In terms of intentionally buying non-vegan items, I think there are exceptions. I've heard from many that in terms of like work boots, there's just really no comparison. Leather just holds up a lot better than non-leather, at least currently. It makes total sense for someone in that situation to buy leather shoes, and by the definition, it doesn't mean they're not vegan for doing so. I think that absolutely falls under the as far as is possible and practicable. We shouldn't be telling people that, oh, you should just quit your job so that you can have non-leather shoes. That's the only way you can be vegan. That's maybe a little extreme. And for the last one, you are a better person if you are vegan. Somewhat agree. In terms of looking at the individual, I would guess that the vast majority of us are better for being vegan, like we are doing more good by being vegan. And most people who are interested in animal welfare, animal rights, are also very much interested in human rights, basically in helping everyone. Of course, there are vegans who are not great, pretty misanthropic, pretty hateful, even homophobic, racist, transphobic. There are vegans using their platforms to spread a lot of harmful misinformation. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Freely does a lot of harm via her channel, calling herself a weight loss expert. Apparently she's doing that now when she has no credentials supporting that, other than that she's skinny, promoting an extremely restrictive diet, telling people to eat more calories than they need, and don't worry about the weight gain, you'll lose the weight eventually, magically, somehow, saying that this is what actually happened to her, that she used to be bigger, she used to be fat, eating so much fruit, and then gradually lost the weight, even though the actual evidence paints a very different picture. Maybe she still, ultimately ends up doing like mostly good rather than bad via her channel. It could be possible that she convinces a lot of people to go vegan, but they don't follow her diet and they eventually end up like moving away from her and her kind of style of activism and all of that, while staying vegan. It's impossible to know, which is why I don't think it's a particularly useful question. I think it's kind of the only question I really have a problem with here. It kind of seems geared to make anyone who chooses strongly agree look bad. Again, I much prefer to gauge the goodness or badness of actions rather than people. Barring extremes, we're pretty much all a mixed bag, including vegans. Overall, I really liked the video, pretty much just barring that last question. It just, I don't know. I wasn't a fan of the last question, but I thought the rest were fine. I thought they were really good choices in terms of showcasing the differences that vegans can have. I like the series in general. Again, I haven't watched any of the other videos, but I like the idea, how different people within a group or who all have the same identity can think about certain issues. It's fun. And I thought everyone, for the most part, was reasonable. I mean, I think obviously Richard had his bad moments. I think he's just very passionate. I do hope he thinks about the everyone has access to fruits and vegetables. Yep, I'm just gonna live on a fruit and vegetable diet, Richard. Sounds great. Is that what you're eating? Is that what you're living on? I kind of doubt it. Yeah, but yeah, for the most part, I thought it was really good. And I enjoyed listening to everyone's answers. I hope you guys enjoyed my answers. They were super awesome and succinct, and I'm sure this is a very short video. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe. Patreon.com/unnaturalvegan is where you can support the channel if you want to. And obviously, if you want to. Okay. Like I said, working on the intuitive eating video. I just saw some people wanted me to do this one, and so I watched it and I was like, I can pump this out pretty quick. Like, I can actually finish my notes in a day. That is virtually unheard of for me. So it's like, you know what, I should take a break from the intuitive eating. I had so many tabs open on my computer, which I normally do not do because it makes me insane. But I did it, and it was like that for days. Like, I literally just had my computer on for days, and it was making me insane. And so last night I spent like an hour going through all of these. Oh man, just terrible. But I feel like so relieved now. And yeah, so hopefully I'm really close. So hopefully I'll have the notes and everything done for that sometime next week. And I'll be able to record and edit and probably get it out for you guys. Maybe the end of next week or early the following week. Look at this shirt. This is pretty fun. This one actually fits me. The last one was a little bit too tight. And there's another one that my partner got me as well that is so tiny. It's kind of flattering that, like, wow, you thought I could fit into that? Like, you really think I'm that small? That is so sweet, but it is laughable. Like, I put it on and it's like a crop top, but not a cute crop top. Like, oh no, that's supposed to be a t-shirt, but you're way too big, you're way too thick for that, and not cute thick. Like, you know, you're bulging out of it, you know what I mean? It's not good. Anyway, this one fits much better. It's rather long too, which I really like. I like longer shirts, and it's super cool. It's my favorite one in terms of the design. It's like got trees and there's a moon and it's like bats, I think, and there's like the sweet ass haunted house. I don't think y'all can see that part, but it's pretty cool for a stupid Walmart shirt. Like, it's pretty cool. You guys asked where I got the last one. Again, partner got these all for me like the day after Halloween. They had like 90% off. And yeah, I'm pretty sure these are all from Walmart. So yeah, like I said, after Halloween, after Christmas, just go to Walmart. Fred Meyer, they do the same thing at Fred Meyer. Any stores like that, and see if they have crazy 75%, 90% off sales. You know, you can get some really like cheap shit, you know, like don't spend a lot of money on this. It's absolute garbage. But for like $2, hell yeah.